Hi, and welcome back to From Morning to Light. And today we have a very different take on grief, and it's something I've wanted to talk about on this event. And now, finally, in this third series, I have found somebody who practices yoga as part of their journey through grief. So I'm really excited to introduce Nancy. Oh, I got that back to front. Sheena Nancy Sarles, and she is a certified yoga practitioner. She's also a holistic life coach, and she is a Reiki practitioner like me. Okay, so welcome, Sheena. It's so good to have you on the show.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here. Thank you.
All right, my pleasure. Let's start with your journey. So, what events happened to you, and what led you to realize that yoga was a good vehicle, for want of a better word, to process your grief and guide you through your grief and help you with your emotions and grief? I'm really curious to hear your story.
Okay. Well, um, years ago, I was started my yoga practice, and about a year later, my father passed away, and this was the first passing in my nuclear family. Quite devastating. What do we do with it? And even though I was new at yoga, I saw that it helped me just in the moments of focusing on breath, focusing on a pose. I was in deep grief, but I found that it was a place that was of comfort. And I was looking for a place of comfort in that time. And I continued with my studies, continued with my yoga. And then my mother passed away 5 years later. And I was deep in my yoga practice, and it really helped. I found that I was just in the deepest of grief, and I would find it all places in my body. And when I would be in a yoga class, I could release and I could be present in the moment. Because for me, the grief it was presence, but it was regret, it was worry, it was all those things. So when I was doing a pose and in my breath and in my presence, I felt a little bit of ease. Moving forward, I started taking teacher training. I was like, this yoga, I love it. And I started doing a teacher training. And during that time, my sister was diagnosed with terminal cancer. And I would be in my yoga class, just tears streaming. And yet there was a place for me to release that. And I found that the yoga took this energy of stress and worry, and it allowed it to just dissipate, even for a moment. One inhale, one exhale, and there I was. So I continued to practice, and I continued to study, and I continued to grieve. And then at this juncture, my best friend of 40 years was diagnosed with glioblastoma, and she passed. And 3 months later, my sister passed from lung cancer. And I was completely bereft. These were my people. These were my go-to. And I would cry and grieve and then get into a yoga pose and go, ah. I would just find a place of presence. So from there, I took a grief writing workshop at our local hospice, and it was wonderful. What color is your grief? What animal is your grief? And everyone was all crunched up. I could just see everyone's bodies just going in. And I understood it because I was doing the same thing. At the end of one class, I just looked around. I said, why don't we all just open? Just do a little yoga. Let's just breathe. Let's just open our hearts. And everyone went, ah. It was this communal ah. That's all I can say. And we were certainly in tears. There was a lot of tissue. Then the director of the program was there and asked me if I would teach yoga for healing loss. To my response was, you don't heal from loss, you learn to live with it. And so from that, I created Yoga for Living with Loss. How do we, and my tagline became and remains, how do we navigate our losses without getting lost? And grief, we're like, what do I do with this? What do I do with this sadness, this energy, this congestion, this lack of knowing who I am, where I am, how I am? We lose all that. But yoga, the philosophy of yoga, of bringing body, breath, and movement together, showed me that there is a path. And so what I found is that through my yoga practice in my grief and sharing it with others, not only do we survive, but we might even thrive. And from that, it gave me and then the people I shared it with an opportunity to express that I'm feeling all different ways. And how do we put that in a place to not feel completely at loose ends and ungrounded? And so it comes back to yoga, the philosophy, and I really enjoy the philosophy of our subtle energy centers, are often known as chakras, but they're these subtle energy centers through our body, and they're a source of information. We can't see them and we can't measure them, but we know they're there. We know when we feel grounded or ungrounded. We know when we feel movement or lack of movement. We know when we feel motivated or unmotivated, or loving or unloving, or we can't communicate, or we can't think straight, or where is our spiritual endeavors? Where do we go with this? So that's how Yoga for Living with Loss was created and continues on. And because grief is a universal experience from this whole seminar. Everyone's coming into this in a different place of grief, but our own grief, no one knows what we're going through at this moment, how we're doing right now. And before my sister passed away, I would meet people and they'd say, I lost a sibling. And I would say, oh, that's so sad. I'm so sorry. Then I lost my sister. And devastating. And it has motivated me to move forward. I carry her spirit as well as my best friend as I move forward and really have this understanding. Not only do we need compassion for each other, we need self-compassion. That's what Yoga for Living with Loss is, finding out who we are, how we are, and how we can take just one breath at a time. There's no other expectation. So that's how it started, and that's where it is.
That's incredible, Sheena. Thank you so much for sharing that journey. I have some questions though. Okay. And maybe I do know the answers to these questions, but this is for the people watching who maybe this is all new to them. They've never done yoga before. So the first question is, you talk about congestion and release. And I've heard people talking about blockages, emotional blockages. So could you talk a little bit into that and just what does it really mean? What does it feel like? And how is it released in yoga?
Okay, so I think that it's semantics, block and congestion, but blocks to me seem very solid and hard to move. Where congestion is, it comes in and it comes out. You can release it. So that's where the congestion comes in. And so when we find our bodies congested in various ways in the grief, from my perspective, we can focus on it. We can intelligently, physically, emotionally, and spiritually take a look at it. And then it doesn't hold us. So where the congestion is, we're not moving it away. Congestion is decongesting, is understanding it so we can navigate it, so we can integrate it. And we're different now. And I think that there's a misunderstanding that we have loss, we grieve, and then we'll be okay. And there is that okay, but it's a new okay. And I see grief as kind of a new thread in our tapestry. We're never going to be the same because we've had this loss, we've had this experience. It can motivate us, it can depress us, it can send us into a spin, it can give us an opportunity. So I hope I'm answering your question. So it's the yoga decongests in that it can take a part of our body, and instead of clenching it or moving it, it opens it.
So could you talk into an emotion, for example, anger?
So the anger is that inward being, comes into your body because you're angry at this person's loss, or you're angry at what's happened, and it's not fair and all that. So in the yoga, we get present. What is it that we're really angry about? It becomes very introspective, very personal. And in these different energy centers, we meet the shadow side. So if I may go through these energy centers, in the root chakra, that's our grounding. That's our primal needs are met. But the shadow side is fear. How can I go on when I don't have this person in my life? But if we understand that the fear is based in that lack of trust, then we can look a little bit deeper and say, well, I do trust this, or I do trust that. So it gives us another outlet. It doesn't have to be just focused on that. Then we go into the second chakra, which is about water and movement and flow, where the first chakra is about me. The second chakra is about how do I connect? How do I move? How do I flow? And so people have a tendency to be very congested. I mean, we can't move. We are paralyzed by grief. But maybe if we just move a little bit in that area, we decongest it. So the anger can be in all these different ways, but like the shadow side of our second chakra is guilt, something I may have done incorrectly. Take a look at it. How do we open it? Third chakra in your belly. It's about shame and self-confidence. And how do I release any of that shame about who I am and how have I been? Then we move up to the heart chakra, and it's all about love and compassion and self-compassion. And the shadow side is loneliness, isolation. We feel that. But when we know where it comes from, we can have a better understanding of how to approach it. Even if it's just going in nature, taking a walk, decongesting. Throat chakra is all about creativity and communication. But the shadow side are lies or gossip. And what are we telling ourselves that's true and that's untrue? And then our sixth chakra is our insight, our between our brows, our third eye. So our two eyes look out, our third eye looks in. What is my intuition? What is my knowledge? And the shadow side of that is illusions. And I always go back to that beautiful book of Joan Didion, The Year of Magical Thinking. And she kept her husband's shoes because she said he might come back. I think we all have that. Like, if I just try hard enough. So it's those illusions. And then our seventh chakra is our knowledge, our understanding. When we have clarity, we have maybe a connection to spirit, but the shadow side of that is confusion, headaches, migraines, all of that. So I feel if you can find where it's centering, then you could do a meditation, a movement, some kind of practice that allows you to, as I say, open that up, decongest it, untie that knot. Anger is a knot. Grief is a knot. It doesn't mean they don't exist. It means that we can have a perspective that gives us an intellectual and emotional viewpoint of it.
Wow, great explanation. Thanks. Thanks, Sheena. Okay, so I believe that you have a great gift you'd like to offer the audience.
I do. So I do offer 2 Zoom classes, live Zoom classes a week, the first 2 Tuesdays of every month. And I invite all of your audience to come for a free class. I welcome everyone, and each class is based on one of these energy centers, the chakras. How we meet it emotionally, physically, spiritually. But my gift is I've also done a 7-part video series on YouTube that is I offer. It's and anyone who would like to come into this free gift can email me, and I'll put your name in my virtual hat and pick it out and give you this 7-part series. Each are 45 minutes dedicated to each chakra for yoga for living with loss.
Wow, that's a very generous gift. Thank you so much, Sheena. Okay, so to everybody watching, if you're interested to go into this lucky draw to win the yoga series, you'll find Sheena's email address on this email that the video has gone out on. So just go back and look for her email address and send her an email.
And there's also lots on my YouTube site. There's a sample class, there's an introductory class. People get a little bit nervous about coming into a yoga class saying, oh, you know what, I don't do yoga. But my joke is, don't worry, we're just going to do handstands and cartwheels. But it's really not that. It's a very gentle class. It's 20 minutes of discussing, of breathing, 20 minutes of discussing that particular chakra, then very gentle yoga to go through, where is this centered? How do I move this? And then the end is a little meditation in Shavasana. Very gentle, very kind, no competition. And some people have their videos on, videos off. I really want people to find this as another spoke in the wheel to deal with your grief. And I always want to emphasize, excuse me, that it doesn't matter if you had a loss yesterday or 25 years ago. It's in you. And so this is an opportunity to express that. And also in my class, you're going to meet a community of people on Zoom who are experiencing the same situation. And we find each other as, yeah, this is hard. Grief is hard. Self-compassion is hard. But maybe together in community, as your seminar is as well, we can find a way to navigate this.
I like that you use that word navigate, because you said earlier you don't heal from grief, you just live with it. And I suppose my whole motivation for putting this series on was so that people can find the tools that work for them. And there are many tools. As you mentioned, there's journaling, there's the yoga, there's meditation, and many, many others besides. There's making art, going out into nature, exercising, running, and there's playing musical instruments. People find their way that suits them the best.
Yeah. And it's a time, I mean, we don't want to say that grief is an opportunity, but it is a time to find a little deeper into what soothes you, what brings you comfort. You know, we go busy in our days, cooking and cleaning and kids and work, but wait, take a step back. One of the things that I have found in the grieving process, that some people say, I'm just going to keep busy. But when you just keep busy, it stays right here. You know, that expression, what you resist persists. I'm not going to deal with it, but it just stays here forever. When you bring it in, you have to go through it to continue on. You can't keep pushing it away because it'll just stay right there. So I think the yoga, in the breath, in the meditation, in the movement, gives you an opportunity to keep understanding that you're moving through it. You know, people say things, are you over it yet? How old was your mother? Do you have other children? I mean, all these questions that are so devastating. And so what we learn is compassion for those people. And aren't they lucky? They don't know yet. They will. They don't know yet. And it's about taking care of yourself, giving yourself the opportunity to go inward, because that's where the grief is. It's inward. So where is it within us? How do we manage it? How do we move on? One step at a time.
Oh, that's very wise words, Sheena. Okay, and tell us a little bit. I think you're writing a book at the moment.
I am writing a book, and it's Yoga for Living with Loss. It's every class has, I always feel I have hours of material that I try to put in 20 minutes. So this is going to be a book that really expands each of these energy centers. What do they look like? What do they represent? What is grief? What is balance? What is the movement? What's the shadow side? What are the foods? What are the colors? These energy centers are an incredible amount of information is held within them. Just so much information that I find exploring nows to be really fascinating. So my book is Yoga for Living with Loss. How do we navigate our losses without getting lost? And hopefully I'm hard at work. So hopefully it'll be published within the next 6 months, and it'll be on my website as soon as it's out there. And anyone is invited to visit yogaforlivingwithloss.com.
And Sheena, would it have the yoga poses in it?
Yes, it will have the yoga poses. It will have photos, and it will go along with the video series.
Oh, okay. So it expands on the video series. That sounds fantastic. Okay. Okay. Ah, that sounds like an incredible guide for people. Yeah.
Well, I hope so. And what it is I'm doing this too. It's not like I took a dart to the bullseye. I said, "Oh, I think I'll talk about grief." This is mine. I'm living this, and so I can understand. I mean, as I say, everyone's grieving, but no one knows mine. No one knows what I'm doing or how you're feeling. So I'm navigating this too. Now, my sister, my best friend, it's coming up to their 7 years. It's a different grief in 7 years than it was in 1 week. You know, they're not out of my life. They're not gone, but I'm navigating it in a different way. Just to give an example, this third chakra called Manipura is about courage and motivation and I do and who am I in the world and my self-esteem. So my interpretation is that I've created Yoga for Living with Loss out of my motivation to do, out of my grief. Where do I do with it? I have yoga, I have grief. What do I do with it? So my personal experience has been to be out in the world to do this. Just to give you an example.
Fascinating. I love yoga. I've been practicing yoga for many, many, many years, and it really helped me when I was going through the really intense period of grief. And I just had this feeling that I needed to keep doing it, keep practicing. You know, when you wake up in the morning and you're feeling really sad and you don't want to get out of bed, I forced myself to go and continue with my routine because I knew it was going to guide me through my grief, and it did. It really did.
And I think that's part of it, our self-knowledge. There's no right way or wrong way to grieve. And I you know, that's also part of it. What gets you out of bed? And maybe there's a day you just don't get out of bed, and that's okay too.
There were several.
That's okay too. It's knowing who you are and how you are, honoring your truth and your feelings. And that's what I love about yoga, that it's so introspective and just so giving. There's a place everywhere, whether you want to do a handstand or just be in meditation. It's the whole range.
Okay, so there's just a question for people who have never practiced yoga before. Is it a good idea for them to start following along to your videos?
Absolutely. It's very gentle. It's open. It's really dedicated to, it's not as much the yoga poses as the yoga philosophy.
Okay. Because I'm just worried there's a whole lot of people who are just thinking, oh, it'll be too advanced for me. I'll never be able to do it. Yeah.
Well, first of all, part of the yoga is you do what you do. You're in yoga, we say the guru, your own teacher. So if there's a pose that isn't right for you, you don't do it. But my whole thing is very gentle so that it's very inclusive. It's not It's not harsh on the body. It's very gentle. Everyone has different bodies, so you have to know your own body. Does this work for you or doesn't it? But it's extremely gentle. That's why I have the sample class. See if this is what something that resonates with you. And you're welcome to, give that try. That's the thing about this grieving journey. It doesn't matter if this is your first loss or your 10th loss, it's all new. Like, how do I do this? So what are the different spokes in the wheel? You're different people. When I lost my dad, that was almost 20 years ago. I'm a different person now, 20 years later, different losses. I've had more experiences. There's different things. So there's always an opportunity to step in.
Oh, this is so good, Sheena. Thank you. All right. So before we close the interview, are there any last words of wisdom or any practical advice besides the yoga that you can give to people?
It's have self-compassion. It's hard. Grieving is hard. Don't beat yourself up. Don't think you're doing it wrong. Be in your truth. We only grieve deeply when we've loved deeply. So there's a lot of gratitude around grief. It's love. It's connection. It's life. And no one said it was going to be fair or easy. Here it is. What are we going to do with it? Make the best. Do what we can to take care of ourselves. So I would say self-compassion is big, and just breathing. Just breathe. That's all we can do. Inhale and exhale.
Breathing is key. I mean, Sheena, I've shared this before on other interviews, but when the young intern came out and said Paul didn't make it, that his internal injuries were too great, I stopped breathing.
We do. We go.
And then I was with a friend, well, my friend was with me, and he said, breathe, Sadie, breathe. He had to say it so many times, Sheena. I just couldn't breathe.
I totally understand. So one of the things about yoga for living with loss and breathing is when you practice it, you have it in your back pocket. So when life is going to throw you those curveballs, and they will, you don't have to learn it. You've got it. So that's, I think, the important part of practicing something in a calming way that you have in your toolbox.
Well, not obviously, but I have been practicing yoga for many, many years, and breath work. I've done a lot of breath work workshops, but even then I was holding my breath in that really momentous moment. But I have to say, in the days following, I started to notice that I was holding my breath, and I had that awareness. And I think, had I not had that practice and not learned how to do breathing exercises, etc., I wouldn't have had that awareness.
Exactly. There's a wonderful meditation teacher online, and if anyone, I can't think of his name right now, but he says you breathe, you inhale, then you're aware that you're not paying attention to your breath, and then you return. No problem. We all do it. We have minds that think, and we're like, I'm going to inhale, and I'm going to go to the grocery store, and I'm going to go to the gym, and then I'm going to exhale and go, okay, I got to come back. So you're present, you're aware, and then you return.
Yeah, that's so good.
And it all comes back to self-compassion. You're not doing it wrong. You're just doing.
And just keep doing it, because the more you do it, the easier it gets. Yeah. Sheena, thank you so much for your time, and thank you for your words of wisdom.
Thank you for having me. I welcome anyone to try this out. Come in. I'm actually always available to chat if that should come up. If people have questions, is this too hard for me? What is it like? What am I doing? I'm always available. Go to my website, find my contact information, because this is we're all in this together. Different places, different ways, different people, but we're in this together.
Yeah, grief is this momentous journey, and it's great that we've got this company of people who have some idea. They may not exactly know what you're going through, but
exactly. Well,
got
but
you.
I thank you for bringing this together. It's an isolating and lonely time to be grieving. So when you can share it in any way, it's just a little bit easier. We're just going for a little bit of ease.
Thank you so much, Sheena. And I'd like to say thank you to everybody watching this interview. And I encourage you to go look Sheena up and see, just give it a try. I mean, if you're watching a video and going along to the video, no one's going to laugh.
Stay along or press pause, you know, you have a lot of choice.
But try it. Why not? I mean, it's not going to do.
I invite everyone, every level, every age, everyone. For me, it's a lifesaver, and maybe it can be for you.
Yeah. Okay, and so that's the end of this exciting interview, and just keep a lookout for the next amazing speaker in this very exciting series From Mourning to Light. So I'll see you all in the next video.
Thank you.